Welcome to the ACCA Strategic Business Leader or the SBL for March 25 exam. My name is Steve Chen, and in this section I'll be taking you through to the Preseen case, which is a charity called Historic Places, or we can call it as the HP. So we will be given the introduction of the charity industry, and the country name is called Eardisia. Before we are given HP information with regards to websites and other information. Now, firstly, we are told that HP is a charity. So this means that the main income possibly will be through donations. So this is why, in order to make sure the charity success, it's important to make sure that the funding source will be coming from a variety of sources. Now, this charity also has a subsidiary which is engaged in lots of commercial activities which are likely to be profit driven. So therefore, the charity itself is non-for-profit making business. However, it can still conduct in many profit-making activities on the exam day. Now, as always, I prepared you with the Preseen application note with in-depth analysis into this case. Before I talk you through about the content, firstly, let me take you through to the Preseen application. Now, what I'm going to be doing is that I would like to show you lots of real-life cases, because these sort of things may be forming into exhibits on the exam day. So therefore, you will need to know what is going on. I've got the past track records of predicting the exam areas and to go through the case in depth alongside with my written mock exams, and you will pass this paper in safe hand. Now, to ensure the success of charity, it's important that you maintain your reputation. So that seems to be quite obvious, but indeed it is not that straightforward. A very good example I can show you is that the museum basing in the US is called the Met, or you can call it as the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now, it did accept donations from private families. One of the very famous families or wealthy families is called Sackler family. It owns a company called Purdue Pharma, although nowadays it's gone into liquidation, but in a few years ago it did provide lots of donation to the Met Museum. So, which means that the family or the company providing funds to the museum, and in return, museum placed donation plaques in the exhibition, showcasing the family's success over the years. However, at that particular moment in time, that company has produced a particular drug called OxyContin. Now, the OxyContin drug is just to be a pain relief drug. However, it has over-marketed it in the market, and therefore lots of people misused the drug, causing lots of death. And at that particular moment in time, the company itself facing lots of pressure. At the same time, the Met Museum was criticized that it accepted funds from this company. So the Met Museum at that particular moment in time has not reacted to this very quickly. But after that, it decided to terminate the contract with this company and with the Sackler family. So, as you can see there, I mean, the public criticized that the museum did not check the client's money source very carefully before it accepted the donation. But in real life, that these sort of charities will sign confidential agreement or the confidentiality agreement with the private donors to protect them, and even to protect some of the companies that which does not want to expose itself to the public, that it has offered donations to these charities. Because if this is publicly known, and to these companies, for example, which do not want others to know that I provided donations like £500,000 per year. So if my competitors offered such donations on the same term or beyond £500,000 per year, they may be treated on a better basis than we do. So, confidentiality agreement will be absolutely important there. However, it's important to notice that for the HP business at the moment, for example, the HP has a two-tier governance structure at the moment, overseeing the activities by the trustees. At the same time, it has got audit, nomination, and remuneration committees. So what I would suggest is that why not to have an ethics committee on the exam day by introducing the non-executive directors to sit on board and to make sure that it oversees such issues. So that could be one of the background information that you may be given, because that's so important. Another lessons that we can learn from this example is that HP should never over relying on a particular funding source. So for example, after the Met Museum cut ties with the Sackler family, in the short term, of course, the budget overruns and it has funding problems. So moving on. Now, for the HP business, it's a group, it has a subsidiary. Now, the subsidiary itself, alongside with the HP, are not subject to taxation in this country. I mean, I'm surprised to see that in this case. So possibly that the examining team does not want to complicate this issue. But in real life, there are a lot of real life cases that because of their increase in commercial revenue, that the tax authority will step in and to think about whether or not we should change the tax law in the future. So that might be a risk for it. But at the same time, we know that it has got a subsidiary that overseeing the commercial activities, which means HP business will still need to get the income to match with the expense. So this is why it is quite possible that there might be different ways that we can grow the business. According to the SBL syllabus, we've got something called strategic alliances. Now, again and again, even in the last sitting, that strategic alliance was tested. In the last sitting, many students commented that joint venture was heavily tested. But as far as I'm concerned, related to this industry, it is highly unlikely that joint venture may be used. But possibly, quite commonly seen, that licensing way may be used. A very good example for this is the strategic alliance licensing way between Louvre Museum in France with Chanel. Chanel and Louvre Museum. Now, at that particular moment in time, this museum has faced with decrease in income. And that's why the director, called Mr. G, decided to put forward a plan to work with other private companies to accept their donations. Remember, donations sometimes can be free of charge, but most likely will not be free of charge. So that's why Chanel worked with Louvre Museum and said to Louvre Museum, okay, if this is the case then, you will need to do something back to us. So for example, why not I can influence your curation? Why not I can display the advertisement of products near the exhibition? Now, these proposals were rejected by Mr. Jean because Mr. Jean has been facing lots and lots of criticisms that Louvre Museum is to work with these private companies. So for example, the former director of Louvre Museum, called Mr. Philip, he opposed to certain ideas. Now, what Mr. Jean has been doing at that time is that Mr. Jean has adopted the centralized approach to leadership. So Mr. Jean said that, okay, I can listen to you, but I will make quick decisions because I know that funding will be very important. Because this company, I mean, I would call HP as a company because it's been registered as a company by guarantee form. So I will explain what is that in a second. So this means that even though that there will be no shareholders, but the company itself can still go bankrupt, okay, if the income is less than its expenses. So therefore, it's adopted the centralized approach by saying that, okay, I'm going to work with these private companies and receive their donations. But he has set up certain restrictions. So for example, Mr. Jean and the curation team will handle the artwork selection, not allowing these companies to influence the curation, not allowing them to display the advertisements near exhibition. So although you will see that if you recall the knowledge from the SBL study, for example, when we talk about the Mintzberg configuration theory, that actually has been using the direct supervision approach to coordinate activities all together. However, it also standardizes the procedures in place in making sure risks will be minimized. Besides, Louvre Museum making all of these public. So that's very, very important to build trusts, to improve transparency, to build trusts among different donors, and that's very important. So as we can see there, on the exam day, there might be a balance between culture and donation. So you will need to comment on those. Because for HP business, it acquired site from a previous owners, although in some of the countries, like in China, this is almost impossible because these are owned by the government. However, that HP charity in this particular country, like for example in the UK, running as a charity to acquire sites and to turn them into more of the modern site and to get various income, which means to commercialize it. So I would say that balancing culture and donation will be one of the things that if I'm the examiner in the examining team of the SBL, I would certainly set a question on that. Okay, so how you would manage those, for example, testing you about the leadership stuff, so possibly authentic leadership style that in your syllabus is time to come up. Right, so moving on then. Now, we're going to be seeing that charities, or we can call it the charitable organisations, promote the welfare of society and public interests. Okay, it carry out many different activities. So this means that there certainly be expenses related to it. And I will show you the like the P&L, what it looks like in a second. But more importantly, to determine the success of a charity, my view is this. We will need to look at a ratio called impact to expense ratio. So this means that you spend money out whether or not you will get the desired impact from it, whether or not you will meet with your objectives. So therefore, in the upcoming sitting, if I'm the member of the examining team, I will certainly set a question on project management. So what I would do is that I'd like to take you through to another real-life case. It's called the Garden Bridge project. Now, this project was introduced back in many years ago under Boris Johnson, who was the former Prime Minister in the UK. Now, the idea behind the Garden Bridge is just to connect the South Bank to St. Paul's Cathedral. I mean, showing people that we look green. But it has received lots of criticisms from the public at that particular moment in time. The reason is, public commented that we have got lots of bridges, for example, Waterloo Bridge, Millennium Bridge already. Why do we need this? At the same time, lots of costs were spent on the design, initially estimated at £60 million, but subsequently increasing that to £200 million. Well, the reason for that is that it needs lots of systems, special irrigation system, drainage system, and even that because the bridge is within the Thames area and therefore an increase in construction costs at that particular moment. So it seems to me that within the project management, this is an example of the costs overrun. Now, it seems to be quite weird. Indeed, it was quite weird. Because at that particular moment in time, that one of the parties said that we shouldn't make these information transparent. Because if I were to make the information transparent in terms of, for example, the executive salaries and funding sources, I mean, like the confidentiality agreement with some of the donors who don't want to expose themselves under media, it may do harm to the project. I mean, the excuse is quite funny indeed. It's not transparent. So back in 2017, which means 4 years later, that we have spent a total of £70 million coming from the taxpayers. I mean, all of these monies were lost, okay? It's completely a waste. However, because at that particular moment in time that we set up the Garden Bridge Trusts, which is quite similar to HP. However, it's different from HP because HP is quite a large business with its revenue over, I mean, beyond 10 million per year. Okay, so I will show you the financial result in the end. And of course, the trust was dismissed. Okay, so after £70 million loss was incurred. So it seems to me that project management will be the very key there. Because in the Preseen, for this particular case, that the financial statement need to subject to audit. And with the income over 10 million per year, of course, the report on internal control should be prepared and reviewed by the external auditor. So I would say that with regards to audit compliance, that should be a topical area in the upcoming sitting exam. But more importantly, the ways that we manage the project, including that during the phase that we prepare the business case and the project initiation document, we'll need to identify different stakeholders in place. So for example, the representatives, okay, from local communities, bring them in, bring the experts in and listen to their advice before you do things ahead. So that's very, very important. Project management this time. Now, I would say that because the charity was set up as company limited by guarantee. Now, we all know that companies limited by shares, which can be the private or unlisted company or the public limited company. Well, in this particular case, it's the company limited by guarantee. So what that means is, so for example, that in the UK, according to the law, that these companies do not have shareholders. They only have trustees or members. Now, they are going to guarantee the small amount if the business goes into liquidation. So for example, if a business is liquidated, which means goes into bankruptcy, okay, so yes, we've got the small amount responsible for it. For example, £1, £10, that's it. At the same time, more importantly, that if you make any mistakes, if I can prove that your mistakes are honest mistakes, for example, okay, you just exercised the wrong judgment, it's absolutely fine, will not punish you, which means that you will not bear any personal liabilities. Right, so that's why at that particular moment in time, as you can see, I mean, the Garden Bridge project, I mean, the financial information was not transparent at that time. So keep overly spending on the design phase of the bridge project rather than spending money on the actual construction stage. So at that particular moment in time, that no one was personally liable for this loss. So who bear the loss? Taxpayers. So that's why project management should be the key there. So make sure that you do this carefully. I'm not saying that under the companies limited by guarantees that nobody will be responsible for the personal liabilities, except the fact that if we found that your mistakes are not honest, you will need to accept personal liabilities. So a good example for this is a charity based in Italy. It's called Croce Rossa Italiana. Now, in 2014, that some of the senior management has been accused to misuse the fund. So what they did is to spend the money out and to buy themselves a Rolex. However, when we audit the account, we found that the purchase was listed as the project equipment rather than the Rolex watch. So this was caught out, and of course, the Italian authority throws personal asset of some of the senior managers. Okay, so at the same time, the charity itself has undergone significant internal reforms, including making sure that all of the internal controls are subject to audit and auditing these in more detail. And as I said to one of my students, okay, so in a few days ago, that I said to him that the 4 lines of defense, okay, within the chapter audit and the compliance has not been tested. I think it's time to come up, possibly, but I'm not particularly sure. But I know that in this industry, it's all about compliance. It's all about making sure that meeting with the objective, that would be the very key. I would say that this industry is rather complicated. It's not very easy. Although when you read through the case, okay, it seems to me, well, it's a charity. But in fact, the charity works with lots of business organizations, and we do need to think about the public interest. I would say that the industry will be rather complicated. Another example from China is all about gourmet meat. Okay, now back in 2011, that the Red Cross, the gourmet meat, okay, the gourmet meat lives a luxurious life, and of course, in charging the Red Cross Society of China, we're not sure where does her money come from. So this is why at that particular time, that people not trusting Red Cross anymore. Okay, so of course, reputation, that you will need time to build trusts among your donors, and if you've got that problem, it will need time to rebuild that. So reputation is the key affecting your income stream. Now, another example about the funding problem related to the staff, because currently at HP, there are over 4,000 staff, including full-time and part-time staff. So how you will manage your staff will be very important. Now, a famous example is Oxfam charity. Back in 2010, Haiti suffered from severe earthquake. Many people died, and that's why Oxfam provide food, water and shelter to this population. However, 1 year later, that it was investigated that staff members hired sex workers. But more importantly, some of them has been underage. Wow. So this means that here's a charity and it has got money from a donor. Donor provides money to a charity, and charity spend the money to hire sex workers. So at that time, I mean, many people lost trust in this charity. So why do I present this case here? Because that relates to our business. Because our business, as you can see, that for HP, it has got 120 years looking after around 350 sites, over 300 years old. So it seems to me that we are a large business and an old business. At the same time, around 4,000 full and part-time employees, and even the staff working for the commercial subsidiary. So this is why we need to care about our staff. So how can we manage the conflict among our staff? And even that managing the behaviors, that's important. So this is why in each and every exam, one of the question requirements about risk management will certainly come up. So health and safety stuff and even the staff behavior, implications to the business, causing business to think of ways to improve the internal control is quite popular this time. Make sure that you're ready. Now, finally, before we move any further, I would like to show you the P&L, but we call this as the statement of financial activities in this industry. We don't call the P&L, for example, revenue as revenue. We call them as income. And we need to match the income with the expenditure. As we can see in the bottom of the Preseen, that income here, operating expenses there, so as you can see, income nearly hits operating expenses. So this means that very little surplus for the year, or we can call it the profit in profit-making businesses. Now, what I would want to say is this. We will need to make sure that the income stream will be diverse, and I will talk about them in detail later on. But to give you an idea, is that for shops catering, that this is where strategy may come in. However, when we talk about the grants and donations, we'll need to manage different stakeholders per the Mendelow's mappings matrix quite well. And of course, for the membership fees, you will need to think about your marketing stuff in your syllabus. And more importantly, we will need to make sure that the expenses related to charitable fundraising and so on would go into the program rather than go into the overhead. There's no point spending lots and lots of money into the admin and salary, but we will need to make sure that costs would go into the program in making sure we meet with our objective. Okay, now that ends our first part summary and analysis of the HP business. What I would do is that for my Preseen application notes, yes, I would like to divide my notes into 14 chapters this time. I would go through the Preseen in chapter 1, followed by SWOT, PESTLE, value chain porters, 5 forces in the later chapters. You may be thinking about, well, where's the porter's diamond? So I would say that it is highly unlikely or very uncommon to see the charities expanding its business overseas. However, we did have charities like, for example, National Trust in the UK that working with the foreign entities to manage the previous heritage sites in former British colonies. I would say that that may be possible, but I don't think that would be the area that I'm interested in. So what I would do, heavily focus on project management, talent management, governance, including the public sector governance, stakeholders management, CSR, risk, IT, sustainability, marketing and ethics. In these chapters, I'm sure that with my Preseen application, alongside with my exam technique revision and our mock exams, you can do these mock exams using our practice platform here at Global APC. I'm sure that you will pass this paper very easily with my help. Right then, so I look forward to your exam success soon and look forward to seeing you in the next of our section. Bye-bye.
APC, accounting for your future.